For the ancient Greeks, the human body was perfect. This is the first line in our textbook in section 9.4, and it's such a bold statement, but since I read it, I had wondered why. What is it about the human body that was seen as perfect for the ancient Greek people? What aspects of their history and culture culminated in their perception of perfection? In my search, I was led to two topics that could answer my question: art and mathematics. My name is Vincent Ingles, and today we will be going over ancient Greek history, mathematics, and art, discussing the various important events and developments that led to the creation of one of the most beautiful sculptures in history, Doryphoros. But first, it's time to research. Okay, so right now I'm heading to the Mugs, which is in Fullerton, right next to the college, to study. So basically for the past few days, I've just been scouring the internet for sources. So I'm gonna spend the afternoon just studying it up. With my sources in hand, I spent my afternoon reading and organizing all the information, taking notes as I go. Once it was all complete, I was ready to head home and begin writing my analysis. So I'm currently on my way to board the second bus that takes me home. Just an unrelated point. It is 5. I started studying this afternoon at 1. It gets so dark now, really quickly. It is very dark. Ugh. Ugh. So I've just made it back home with my research in hand. I spent a good while making this as accurate as I can get it. So I think we are ready for the analysis. The results of my research ended in this. It's definitely a lot of information, but we'll be dividing them into 3 sections. Section 1, Ancient Greek History. Section 2, Art and Mathematics. And Section 3, the Analysis. In my research, I created a timeline to map out all the major events that will be important for our analysis as to why the human figure was so perfect for ancient Greece. According to the books How to Read Greek Sculpture by Sean Hemingway in 2021 and Ancient Civilizations Reference Library published by Gale, with a section on ancient Greece edited by Judson Knight and Stacey A. McConnell in 2000, this period of time can be broken into 4 major eras: the geometric period, circa 900 BCE to 700 BCE, the Archaic period, circa 700 to 500 BCE, the Classical period, circa 500 to 338 BCE, and the Hellenistic period, from 338 BCE to 31. This is a large period of time, so we'll have to narrow down our focus. Thankfully, the previously mentioned section 9.4 gives us a perfect place to start. The first section is titled Polykletos, Doryphoros, or Spearbearer, written by Dr. Beth Harris and Dr. Stephen Zucker for smarthistory.org, and it highlights the sculpture Doryphoros and its sculptor Polykletos. This is our artist, so now we need to find our mathematician. In an article titled Would You Be Considered Beautiful in Ancient Greece by Anna Wickman in September of 2023, an important Greek mathematician and philosopher is highlighted for his contributions to ancient Greek culture, Pythagoras. Placing their lifetimes on the timeline, our main period of time becomes clear: Classical Greece, with a brief dive into the end of Archaic Greece. Pythagoras' life begins in Samos, around 570 BCE. This intersects with the second half of the Archaic period. The arts flourished here, poetry, pottery, and architecture standing out in particular. This perfectly transitions into the Classical Age of Greece. From Ancient Civilizations Reference Library, they open their section about Greece with, "The Classical Age in Greece is one of the most celebrated periods in the history of civilization," continuing with the inner period of Greece's Golden Age from 479 BCE to 404 BCE. This period begins very briefly after Pythagoras' death, but begins very briefly after Polykletos' birth. And while this short era of Greece's history was considered golden, this era was strife with war. Something else that was mentioned in the Anna Wickman article was the golden ratio. The discovery of this ratio was attributed to Pythagoras, but in an article titled Golden Ratio by Jacob Obermiller and Senna Berndt for Adobe, they state that it was first mentioned by another ancient Greek mathematician, Euclid, in Euclid's Elements in 300 BCE. But it did exist and was recognized by other Greek mathematicians such as Pythagoras, just not as the Golden Ratio. From this, we can gather that the Golden Ratio did exist within Pythagoras' lifetime and onward up until 300 BCE, where it was first mentioned. This implies that it was not only relevant, but incredibly important to the culture of ancient Greece, especially the classical period, where it was most prominent. With the math covered, we can shift our attention to the art side, specifically Polykleitos and his contributions to classical Greek culture. In section 13.9 from Art Through Time, A Global View, produced by 13 in association with wnet.org in 2009, they state that the Doryphoros, or spear-bearer, has long been regarded as an exemplum of male beauty as conceived by the ancient Greeks. The reason for this? The canon. The canon, or rule, was a mathematical system that was developed by Polykleitos himself. The mathematical formula used exactly is lost to time, but the results of it manifested in the idea of symmetria, or symmetry, which was used consistently throughout high classical Greece. Not only did it create a sense of proportion and balance, but the use of contrast was incredibly important in utilizing symmetrias effectively. Otherwise, artwork and sculptures would end up flat and boring. We can turn our attention towards Doryphoros and understand why it represented the beauty seen by the ancient Greeks. Well, with everything we've discussed so far, it would be symmetry, right? That's only one part of the answer. Symmetry is a very important aspect of the piece, as seen in the symmetrical accuracy of the chest, the shoulders, the abs, the legs. But something else that is important is contrast. Referring back to section 13.9 from earlier, they state that the body of Doryphoros, for example, stands in what is termed
contrapposto,
meaning that his weight rests on his right leg, freeing his left to bend. This can be seen not only in Doryphoros, but in other ancient Greek sculptures like Piraeus Athena, circa 350 BCE. Furthermore, something that can be noted about Doryphoros is the natural softness and curves of the figure. These natural curves can also be seen in other sculptures like a Phoebe of Marathon, circa 340 to 330 BCE. But the last thing to note from all these sculptures is the civility presented with all of them, the calmness of their faces. With that, I think we have our answer. Welcome back. So what was it about the human figure that they thought was perfect? What was a part of their perception of perfection? Well, for the ancient Greeks, their views of perfection highlighted symmetry, seen through the importance of advancements in creations like the canon, symmetria, and the golden ratio. But they also saw the human body's natural curves as perfection, and the way that humans presented themselves, civility and appropriate uses of contrast. As we have discussed, it wasn't just a sudden love for proportion and balance forced in by one individual, it was a culmination of the efforts of the people, the philosophers, poets, artists, and mathematicians who helped in creating the culture of ancient Greece, in creating this view of perfection. And this resulted in one of the most beautiful sculptures in all of history, Doryphoros. Thank you so much for joining me on my journey to uncover this mystery, for unraveling the mystery as to why the ancient Greek world was so in love with the human figure and saw it as perfection. Oh my god, my cat. She's on my bed. Little baby.